Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cranked and Ranked, the podcast where me and my friend Mr. Eddie Sparxx, we rank rock and metal, and as you heard last time, if you listened, sometimes other genres of music, but we rank albums, bands' discographies, and other types of things. And we have a good time doing it, and hopefully you have a good time listening to it. I'm Steven, a.k.a. Old Head, and as I mentioned earlier, my co-host is Mr. Eddie Sparxx. Hello, sir.
Yo, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going really great today because we are going to be talking about one of my favorite bands of all time, easily in my top 10 favorite bands, and so that alone, I mean, I've been as I was going through their discography and listening to everything again, you know, with kind of a more of a critical ear and writing down notes, I'm just like, man, I just get nothing but pleasure out of listening to this band. The band that we are going to be talking about today is Living Colour. I can't tell you how excited I am to talk about them. And Living Colour only has 6 studio albums, and we're going to be sticking with those. The 6 full-length studio albums from Living Colour and ranking them from what we think is the least great to the most great, or in my case, the really great to the fucking fabulous, I guess. Not to give anything away. But I guess, do you have anything to say, like, real quick before we start?
They're kind of like the Terminator franchise of bands, because, like, the albums have like 6 to 7 year spacings between them, and it's like that's just a weird parallel I noticed while I was looking at like the release dates, and it's like they have like the same amount of time between them after a certain point. But
although I don't think all of the Terminator movies are good, but you know, that's a different podcast. But as usual, let's talk about where we first heard Living Colour, where mine is literally the same story that is pretty much everyone else's story. I saw the music video for Cult of Personality when it came out in 1988, and it blew my 10-year-old mind. I was just like, because at that point I hadn't discovered like thrash metal yet. I was just listening to hard rock music, and I think the hardest I got was probably Cinderella. Like that was maybe at that point as hard as I had gotten. I guess Van Halen had louder, crazier guitar solos and stuff, but I hadn't quite yet branched out. And Living Colour was the first band that just, I heard them and I go, this seems different. This doesn't quite fit in with all this other stuff, yet it still fucking kicks ass. And I remember too that I saw the video and I was obsessed with it to the point where I kept asking my parents, like, can you drive me to the record store so I can buy their album? And I remember that this is probably saying too much about my dad, but you know what? This is the guy that he was. I remember that I kept asking him to go get it. And then one night, Living Colour played, I think it was on Saturday Night Live or one of the talk shows. I don't remember, but I just remember like being there with my dad and being like, this is that band. And my dad, I think, saw that they were black people, and he's just like, no, this is just a bunch of noise. And I'm just like, okay. And I eventually got it anyway, but I just remember like, because that was the thing. Like you were as a white person. I mean, you're a white person in another country, but in America, especially back then, you were always in contact with people who were not vaguely, they were sort of undercover racists. Like they were, they knew that they shouldn't be racist, but it didn't matter. They were anyway. And at least my dad always had the forethought or the, I don't know, whatever it was, to not actually say anything rude about people of another race. But I could tell that it was always there. But at that point, he was already mad because I was listening to hip hop anyway. So it was like, I was heading down the wrong path. But no, my dad's actually a great guy. He's still alive, and I don't think there's really any traces of that racism left. My dad was one of those guys that got older and got way more open-minded, especially after having to deal with me, and then I have an older brother who came out as gay. So my dad had to grow up a lot.
Yeah.
So, but not to talk about my life story, but that's how I remember Living Color, was that those initial reactions and my dad not wanting me to get their album, and it just made me want it even more. So, and I've literally been a fan ever since. And so, how about you? Is it GTA San Andreas?
Get your bingo cards out, kids. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's GTA San Andreas. Same place I found Helmet. Same place I found Soundgarden. But the cool thing is, Cult of Personality, same song. It's just such a great fucking song. I will get to it, but god damn. Like I remember when I first heard it, I was like, I want to learn how to play that riff. And this was early on in me being a guitarist and being a musician in general. Like drums is my main, but this was back when guitar was really my thing. And I sat down, I looked at the tab for it. For those who don't know, that's just sheet music for guitarists that don't want to learn theory.
Which is what I used.
Yeah, same. And essentially I looked at it and I went, yeah, wait, what? Like I didn't realize how complicated a riff it actually is until I sat down and looked at it, and I thought, yeah, what? My fingers are supposed to contort here? What the fuck?
Did they actually tab out Vernon Reid's guitar solos also? Because I
didn't get that far.
That's a thing where like I don't even know if he knows what he's doing sometimes. That guy is. I mean, he was initially a jazz player. Kind of more avant-garde jazz, I guess. And he brought that along with him. So you hear his solos, even in that song, where there's a little bit of like, is he just randomly hitting notes, or is there something going on there? Either way, it sounds fucking awesome.
It's kind of like with Slayer, but it's more contained, but you have less of an idea what's going on. Like
a lot of chaos. Well, cool. I mean, honestly, I feel like that's probably everybody's first Living Color song, because especially nowadays, I think that's a lot of people who are just sort of casual rock fans or whatever. That's probably the only Living Color song they know. Because
it's a shame. They've got so many other like amazing songs.
Yeah, and what it's
at
also
that level.
Also, it's because it's now been relegated to classic rock radio. And you hear it, I think, probably still every day over here on like a classic rock radio station. I'm sure they play Cult of Personality at least once every day. And so that's something to be said. Like, it has moved over into classic territory, which there's only a handful of 80s and 90s tracks that have moved over to where they're now being played with Zeppelin and whatever you want to say, what Boston and shit like that. Anyway, so that's awesome, but that's an incredible introduction, and it was actually the introduction to the first album. But I have a weird feeling we're not going to be talking about the first album yet, because we are starting with what we both consider the least great of the Living Color catalog. And as usual, I'm going to let Eddie take the lead here. So what is your number 6 Living Color album?
Cool. So my number 6 Living Color album is The Chair in the Doorway from 2009.
Okay, cool.
So upon opening up this album, I suppose I should contextualize a little bit. The album that came before it 6 years prior in 2003 was Kaleidoscope.
Mm-hmm.
But even 6 years on, the guitars are just as muddy as they were on that album. And it kind of struck me, like, I listened to them chronologically.
Yeah.
And, like, I was kind of shocked at the production of this one. And I'll get to it, but, So, Burned Bridges has, like, this cool, like, alt-rock feel to it. But, I'm already struck by the production. which has this weird quality to it where the drums are really loud. Everything else is a little bit quiet for what it's meant to be. And the guitars are muddy as fuck, which is weird considering, like, we, especially in 2009, where the muddiness problem was out. It was more just everything being too hot. Whereas this album feels like strangely quiet apart from the drums.
I feel like, though, that it took a little while. There was a weird thing where all of a sudden, we've talked about this before with other bands, where in the 2000s, there was such a retreat from the 80s and early 90s sound that bands started putting out stuff that was way more stripped down. But then if you were a band that no longer had a whole bunch of major label money behind you, then you were essentially making an album that just sounded like a demo. Like, so all of these bands, now I'm not saying Chair in the Doorway necessarily sounds like a demo, but it's almost like the producers who they worked with, not just them, but other bands, just all of a sudden didn't really know how to translate rock music anymore. And so there's a lot of very awkwardly produced albums. I mean, they're still there today. There's a lot less of them now than there were. But I feel like the 2000s is just plagued with albums that could have been way better if they had had somebody better behind the boards.
I think a thing that, like, could be a factor too is, like, I suppose when, like, digital recording kind of took over, you couldn't really push the limits on, like, the levels and stuff. Like, it used to be with analog tape that you could record really fucking loudly and get a really cool fat sound out of it. And then the moment it went over to digital, it was like, oh, this clips and sounds like ass. Let's not do that. But I suppose in a way that could also make things sound a bit less ballsy. So it's kind of weird.
You're probably right. That's probably has a lot to do with it too.
I think people are afraid to be loud, but at the same time, you kind of have to obey the laws of whatever you're recording on.
It's almost like, though, in most cases, they're afraid to be loud while they're recording it, but then when they mix it, they want to boost everything up so it's brick-walled all the shit.
It's like, I just want to get to the loud part. God damn it, I have no patience. But, the Chair has a cool vibe to it. Decadence. I gotta be honest, like I say, this song has a real headbanging groove to it that's hard to fuck with, but again, I think this is one of those sad cases of production really fucking an album a little bit. Young Man is a dancey rocker. Method is also a kind of vibey alt rocker. Behind the Sun, at the time of writing this, like, I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling. I feel like a lot of the songs on this album are being played at the wrong tempo. Like, these would have a lot more energy being played just that little bit faster, or maybe just that little bit slower. Like, they all have this kind of, they want to get there, but it's not quite there. Just, maybe shift a few gears, maybe, but yeah. Bless Those has a good groove to it. Hard Times is this slow grinding one. Taught Me. I mean, again, I've rolled back around to the production. It's a really unfortunate kind of thing to taint an album, because that's a pretty consistent issue for the whole runtime. Again, it's just super murky. The drums are way louder than everything else. It to me, it wasn't a very comfortable or fulfilling listen. Not in the way that music should be challenging, but rather it sounds not as good as other records that they did.
Also, I think that maybe it doesn't help that I think this album is probably it seems like it's their most kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also got a lot of heavy shit on it, but I think that there's less surprises in this album than there is in pretty much all the rest of their albums.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt that. Out of Mind, it does have some cool riffage going for it, but like you say, like we mentioned, it's like kind of vanilla. I said that before the podcast started, but we were having a conversation. But I'm going to leave that up to you guys to think about what I referred to as vanilla. Not Tomorrow has a cool vibe to it, and I gotta say, Asshole has some funny lyrics in it.
Yeah,
and yeah, you are an asshole.
Yeah, it's a fun ending song to the album.
For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about these albums because I do think that you bring a different, like you hear things a little bit differently than I do. Even though we do seem to agree on a whole lot of things, I think that there are things you pick up on that I don't, and then and vice versa, I guess. But yeah, I get the interesting thing is that your number one gripe about the production of this album is my number one gripe about my number 6 that is not Chair in the Doorway. My number 6 is Kaleidoscope from 2003. Yeah. And so Kaleidoscope was their first album in 10 years. That was Stain. Stain came out in 93. And I think they put out, in 95, they put out something called Pride that actually had songs that were intended for an album that never came out, but then that was it. That's all the new stuff you heard until this album in 2003. And the number one thing about this album for me is the production of this album, because it really, it does feel like there are weird choices made. Like every time I listen to this album, I think of the same thing. This reminds me of the recordings I would hear when I went to college for audio engineering, and you would hear student-produced projects. Yeah. It sounds like that, because I remember always hearing people's jobs, because you took audio engineering, and at the end of the semester, you would bring in some artist and you would record and mix their shit, and that was your final project. And I wasn't necessarily very good at it, but I could hear other people would do stuff, and I'd be like, this just sounds amateurish, and you could have done so much more just with the basic tools that you had. And so there's weird basic problems with Kaleidoscope. Like even in the first, all through the album, the drums, it's like they did no EQing and no sort of mixing at all on them. They just recorded them and then didn't bother to ever turn them up. They were just there. And so they sound oddly weak and kind of not, it sounds very uneven. And then you'll have the guitars where they decided the guitar needs to be just right in the middle of everything, really compressed and really small, while everything else has like room to echo. But the guitar, no, that is right there in the middle. And I'm always like, that sounds awful. Like the song would have so much more life to it if they would have just double the guitar or do something. But I really do think that whoever was behind it just didn't know what they were doing. And maybe the dudes didn't know how to tell them, or didn't want to tell them, hey, can you, or maybe they thought it was fine. I don't fucking know. But I really do think that this album is it's unfortunate, because this album would be a lot higher if the production was better, because there's a lot of great songs on Kaleidoscope, and it's probably one of their oddest albums overall. Just some of the song and the choices made in some of the songs, I often will go, that's unusual, which is cool, because it shows that they're such a great band. They didn't have to get back together after 10 years and then go, hey guys, remember us? We wrote Cult of Personality. Here's a very similar song. They did not do that. And that's fucking great. That's a big reason why I do like this album. The production really holds it down. And also, I think we've talked about this before. Occasionally, bands will include cover songs on their albums, and they drag the album down. Whereas we'll talk about another album later that has 2 cover songs, and they sound fabulous. But on this one, you've got a pretty basic cover of Back in Black that just sort of derails the album. Totally. I was like, just skip that track altogether. And then later on, what's the other cover they do? They do Tomorrow Never Knows, I think is the other one by the Beatles.
Yeah.
And that's fine and all, but they're just unnecessary in an album that's already long enough as it is. We don't need any more here. But really, like, I think the only reason that this is disappointing is because I really do think that if it had been given the production of, say, Time's Up or Vivid, which I know in 2003 that wasn't the thing, but if it had at least a bigger sounding production, or even the production they would eventually have on Shade, it would be so much better, because some of the songs, just the life isn't there in them. But you can easily hear that this is good shit. These are good songs. And honestly, even that aside, you take the production out of it, the album alone is still better than most shit that came out in 2003. And so, they still kick the shit out of most, rock bands today. And so it's hard for me to put this one last, but that was the number one thing when I was listening to this album. I just went, I can't get comfortable and enjoying this album. Like, I think you said that about Chair in the Doorway with your issues with the production, that you can't get comfortable in enjoying it because there's so many odd things where I go, I can't get into the groove. Like, something is weird here. Like the everything's off. And so that's why I have to put it here. But it is still a fantastic album. Just get somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing behind the boards. Take out the cover songs, and then we're good to go, because there are so many good songs on here. And like I said, I'll say this probably on all of their albums. The thing that I like about Living Colour as a band, well, there's many things I love about them, but the number one thing is that I feel like from one song to the next, when I'm first listening to an album, I have no idea where the next one is going to go. Yeah. And it's not like they're sort of bizarre, like a Mr. Bungle or anything. But they'll have a song that has a more of a straightforward R&B vibe, and then they'll have some sort of crazy chaotic noise rock kind of thing, and then they'll follow that up with something that has more of like a funk metal influence. But even within those songs, there will be odd choices when it comes to time signatures or chord progressions or whatever Vernon Reid is doing with his crazy mind. And then on top of that, you put one of the greatest vocalists ever, in my opinion, Corey Glover, and it just comes together as this package that sounds like literally no other band that you're ever going to hear. Like we talked when we did Soundgarden, I feel the same way about Living Colours. If Soundgarden, well, obviously there's no more Soundgarden, and I don't think there ever can be a band to replace them. And I feel the same way about Living Colour, even on an album like Kaleidoscope, where I think it could be better. So there you go. That's my number 6.
Cool. So my number 5, I'm going to piggyback right off of what you said with Kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to do my track by track, as I do. Song Without Sin, right out of the gate, the guitars are muddy as fuck, but like that's a symptom of early 2000s metal albums anyway. Mm-hmm. That said, like the more melodic sitar parts and vocals do sound cool.
Yeah.
But it's like the stuff that's meant to make the groove aspect of their sound is just not coming together. It
is weird. Yeah, it's like some aspects of it, they took the time to fuck with it a little bit, but then everything else, like, just leave it. Leave it on the preset.
It's kind of like when you're in class and you've got to do like a group project and you spend like fucking half of like the lesson time making a really nice looking snazzy border around whatever you're meant to write, and then you actually have to write something important.
And then you just write it in marker.
Yeah. Yeah, like then you get a question of when. At the time of writing this, I hope this album doesn't clip as bad as this song does throughout, as it really distracts from the cool riffs. But thankfully, I didn't notice too much clipping elsewhere, as bad as it is on track 2. You know, because like there are parts where the guitars do that awful thing, and it's like, oh, that's such a
That was a good
no-no.
impression of that. That's exactly what it sounds like.
I can't wait. Eddie Sparxx clipping ASMR.
It's going to be a bestseller.
That's it. That's the new trend. Nobody steal that. I'm stealing that from myself. But Operation Mind Control has like a full-on grunge vibe to it. Flying has a nice vibe to it too, but it also sounds like what Red Hot Chili Peppers have done for the last 22 years.
Oh no, you take that back, sir.
I don't know, man. I heard some Red Hot Chili Peppers vibes in this one for me. I don't know what it was. It could be. I'll have to re-listen to it to see if I was right, but that's what I was hearing at the time. In Your Name is pure industrial metal. Like, that riff in the middle is brutal. Then you get the Back in Black cover. I'm going to hand it to them. At least they put their own spin on the riff slightly, like with a chord that's a little more living color. But again, I do agree that when you see this in the track listing, I was like, the thing is, when I see a track listing, I think to myself, is it going to be a cover, or is it just sharing the song title of another song to fuck with whoever's about to listen to it?
Yeah, because isn't there an Amy Winehouse song called Back in Black? I think there is one, and it's not a cover of AC/DC.
I think the whole album is called Back in Black, if I remember right, as well. Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember specifics, but like, for some titles, like, every single 80s metal band has a song called Under the Gun.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Back in Black, for example, that would be kind of like writing a song called Don't Stop Believing that's not in any way affiliated with Journey whatsoever.
Here's our new song, Smells Like Teen Spirit. No, not that one.
Yeah. When it started, I was like, yeah, this is an AC/DC cover, and it's cool, but it does kind of affect the flow of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Nightmare City is a cool reggae-infused groover. Lost Halo has some melodic sensibility, but also some shamelessly inappropriate shred from Vernon Reid. Holy Roller is a cool, laid-back groover. Great Expectation. You see what I'm saying here? The songs are cool. It's the production that really lets it down.
Mm-hmm.
Great Expectation, funky, grungy, heavy tune. Choices mashup, slow, dirgy, grungy track. There is like a bit of a grunge feel at times on this album, despite it coming out in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it seems like riff-wise, they would get heavier. Like, their riffs would get heavier. In a darker kind of way with later albums. Yeah,
it was kind of like they'd gone from being poppy, funky, played through a metal rig, and now it was like hard and metal played through a metal rig. It's like, you get Pocket of Tears is a vibey one. Sacred Ground is a groovy track. Tomorrow Never Knows, Beatles cover. And Nova is a vibey outro. I agree. These bottom two could have been much better were they produced in a way that didn't completely shit on how good of a band they actually are. You know?
Yeah. It does the songs and the band a disservice. But we're gonna do a little crisscross here because I'm gonna go talk about my number 5, which is The Chair in the Doorway. So,
hey, we did a crisscross.
We did. Chair in the Doorway. Nope. Let me try it again. The album is called The Chair in the Doorway. I don't know what came out of my mouth right then. It was like doorway. From 2009. Now, honestly, to me, if you're comparing this album to Kaleidoscope, this has a better production quality to me because at least it feels more together and somebody knew what they were doing more so. It just feels more solid of a production style. And I said this before when you were talking about it. I really do think this is a much more straightforward album, and it's got a much heavier vibe. But really, like, the thing that I have to give them credit for is that this is, the second album after getting back together, and still they don't ever seem like they're phoning it in. Like, I don't ever hear this band and go, I think they've done this before, or this doesn't really seem like they were really 100% invested in this thing they wanted to do. It doesn't seem like that. There's no sort of like average Living Color song, because they find a way to I guess accentuate the best qualities of what they're doing in their music, which is really just like four fantastic musicians together, and I feel like they just bring the best out of each other. And Chair in the Doorway has a lot of really good songs, and I'll say the same thing I said about Kaleidoscope. If you slap some 80s production on this one even, I think, would sound like an old school Living Color album from around 1990 or so. Because the songs have that same kind of feel, while being maybe a little bit heavier. So it is more of a step forward, but there's still a pretty good classic quality to the songwriting in some of these. But I've always really enjoyed, like, I love the fact that they never really got complacent with doing a particular thing, which is interesting because a lot of bands get older and that's what they do. Like, they go, well, we're going to do this kind of thing, where they literally will have everything from the melodic to the funky to the abstract to the heavy, and then they'll have one that's a combination of all of those things together. Like I said before, it's just I don't know. I always enjoy, like, the concoction that these dudes come up with. And I think it's probably, like I said, it has to do with them as musicians and them bringing their own personal influences into the music. And I think we'll touch on that a little bit later, because I feel like as we get into the higher up albums, there are things that I'll point out, I think, that kind of explain what makes them so fucking great. But we've talked about this album enough already, so let's go ahead and move on. That was my number 5, the Chair in the Doorway.
Cool. So what I consider a huge step up in quality with number 4, we get 2017's Shade.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So now, like I've said many a time on this podcast, we are now in the love zone.
Yeah,
as
I would
Rob
agree.
Halford once said. Because, my God, this was I can't even begin to put into words the pleasant surprise of this.
Yeah.
You know, I was worried that I was going to be greeted with another muddy, kind of murky sounding album, and then all of a sudden, this somehow, with all of like the modern techniques they use on it, they capture that old school vibe at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a case of a band being so unique that they just sound the way they do, and providing the production picks up on all of the sonic qualities that make them so fucking good. This is the sound they should have had on the previous two, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
it's almost like the thing that just popped in my head. It's almost like, you know, like you always see these fantastic photographs of bands that professional photographers make, where there's just mid-air kind of shit, or they just, for some reason, they've just captured these perfect moments, and then you or me goes with our camera and takes pictures. It's like, oh, why doesn't it? Why doesn't it? So I feel like Living Color is that band that you have to have the person that knows how to take the perfect picture of them, because otherwise it's just, they're still amazing. You just didn't capture it the way that you should have captured it. And on Shade, I don't know who produced this one, but Andre Betts, who I don't know who that is, but He did do a great job on this album.
He knows what he's fucking doing, because
Yeah.
this album sounds rad. So, without further ado, Freedom of Expression, FOX.
Yeah.
I listened to this immediately after Sharing the Doorway, and my God, it really highlighted, I've already said this, but they shit the bed on the production on the previous two. This, at the time of writing this, way better, less than even a minute in. I was so hyped when this came on, because I hadn't heard anything off it, save for Who Shot Ya.
Yeah.
But like, I just thought, oh, Who Shot Ya? That's a cool Modern Living Color song. I didn't kind of put two and two together, because like that one had been released separately previously, and then all of a sudden I hear the rest of this album and I think, fuck, dude, they're back. Which
was a good thing for me when I first heard this album, because I was a little weary of it, because it was one that took a while, and there was a lot of back and forth of like, oh, we're not going to be releasing it when we said we were going to because of issues. And I was all like, oh, is this one of those things where they can't get their shit together and we're going to get like the best of all these kind of mediocre songs? But it didn't turn out that way. And so I was pleasantly surprised.
Hell yeah. Like Preaching Blues, like that classic Living Color vibe is back.
That's one of 3 covers on this album. And I don't even want to hear the Robert Johnson version of that song. Like I'm sure I have at some point in my life, but their version of it, especially Vernon Reid's guitar playing on that, I'm just like, fuck everybody else. I realize that we wouldn't have this without Robert Johnson, but come on, man. Vernon Reid is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, his riff work is second to none.
Yeah.
Come On plays around with like some modern electronic techniques, but still retains that Living Color touch that just makes them
There are some cool modern production touches on this album that I hear them and I still go, that's fucking cool. And I love it when they do shit like that.
And it's almost like I think there's like a dubstep kind of break in that.
Yeah.
And I would think that seems a little, I don't know, that like, hey, fellow kids kind of syndrome. I don't get that with this, because they always threw stuff in that was just like, hey, we like this new thing. Let's throw something like that in there,
I think that is one of the benefits of being a band like this, because they always seem like a sponge, like a giant sponge that just like took in influences and things that they liked from wherever it was, and they just made it into their own, and that doesn't necessarily need to stop now that they're older, So if they want to have a fucking trap song on the next album or whatever, it's like I'd be totally behind it.
Hell yeah, I wholeheartedly support that. You get Program, like once again back doing that modern tinged classic Living Color kick-assery. Who Shot Ya has a really cool melodic rap delivery and tackles the problem of gun violence. It's also
a cover.
It's also it's a cover, is it?
Oh, okay? Well, let me blow your mind. That is Who Shot Ya is originally a song by the Notorious B.I.G.
Oh wow, yeah.
And they basically took the lyrics, and instead of full on rapping them, he does kind of a sing rappy kind of thing. And they just made it into a Living Color song out of the Notorious B.I.G. song.
That is a Biggie song that I have not heard and need to.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, you should definitely. I believe it's on his biggest album. I think. I'm not sure.
We'll do Biggie at some point.
Oh well, fuck yeah. But yeah, I do think that's like on the Is It Ready to Die, I think is the name of the album. I think it is on that one. But anyway, yeah, it's cool. a fun fact that it's. But they do it in a way where it's easy to be like, oh, this is just a Living Color song. But nope.
Man, it's also really cool to hear Corey Glover still has that awesome voice he's always had.
Oh,
he hasn't lost. he hasn't lost a single fucking chord in that throat of his.
He is they are one of those bands that they don't have to play their songs in a lower key. He can still sing them, and he still sounds fantastic. That's just a testament to how I've always said he is one of the best singers, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is out there good, ridiculously fucking good. Always Wrong has some like Rage Against the Machine meets grunge-esque moments in there.
Yeah, but that's all. That's got that thing I'm talking about, the production trick where in the middle of the chorus, everything slows down like the tape has been stopped, and then it starts back up immediately. But it's in the middle of the chorus, and every time that happens, I'm all like, that sounds fucking awesome. And it's just one of those little things that they didn't need to do that. The song was already cool, but it just adds another level of awesome to the song.
For sure. Blackout is a heavy, funky groover.
Yeah.
Pattern in Time, thrashy with their unique melodic take on it.
And that's got that's got the parts. I'm just interrupting here.
That's cool.
That's got those cool. That's a good example of Will Calhoun and his drumming, because in the chorus of that, and he does this often where he switches up the kind of beat that he's doing instead of just doing a 4/4. And I just love hearing those little things, because I think that's another reason why I love this band, because they all will do things within a song that some other band would tackle in a very average way, and they put a little spin on it because they're just not comfortable just doing a regular 4/4 power chord kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, man, like, who's that? Like, I put here, nice fat groove on this bad boy. Glass Teeth is another groovy hard rocker. Invisible is a riffy groover. There's so much groove on this album. It's awesome. Inner City Blues, bluesy rocker.
Another cover.
You can always tell you can always tell if it's a cover because it's got blues in it.
Well, that's a Marvin Gaye song.
Yeah.
In that case.
And Two Sides is a vibey, ballad-y closing track. I am pleasantly surprised, like, half to death by this album, because it's rare that an album so recent has such an impact with me, but this is one that I feel has already aged incredibly well, and it's only 4 years old. You know,
I agree.
Yeah,
I'm actually just going to continue talking about it because this is also my number 4.
Sweet.
But we're taking where you left off, the Two Sides as a closing song. I always love this song because it starts off like a song that I think I'm not going to like, and it becomes really good. Just because the beginning of it, I think, it doesn't. For some reason, the beginning doesn't quite hit what I need in a song, and also lyrically speaking, there are some lyrical themes that have been done to death, and one of them is the two sides to a story kind of theme. And so once that starts, I go, yeah, we've heard this kind of thing. But the way the song builds out is so great. It's such a great ending to the album. But I mean, I think we would both agree, since this is both our number 4 here, this is their best album of this century. They haven't. I mean, I hope they top it. So far, this is their best. I think they got at least another 1 or 2 good ones in them if they get their shit together and move a little quicker. I don't know. It's been enough time now. They could put one out now. But the energy on this album is just undeniable. And you're right. The production allows it to really show through in the album. And also, it's just one of these things where in 2017, that it's pretty much, 30 years since their first album came out. I guess, 29 or whatever. But just the fact that 30 years later that these dudes, they don't sound like an old rock band to me. Like
they still got it.
They do sound, seasoned, I guess. Like they're a little more, like they're a little bit better at what they're doing, I think, overall. But and maybe their music, you know, like because this album is number 4 and not number 1, their music may be not quite as exciting, but I think that part of that has to do with the fact that we've already heard the first 3 Living Color albums. So unfortunately, they already put those out, so they always have to live up to those. But in this case, the songs are so strong. And like I said, even the 3 cover songs, I don't care that they're cover songs because the way that they're done and placed in the album, it doesn't ruin the momentum. They put their own spin on things. It makes it feel kind of like a cool album where they're bringing in this new Living Color stuff, but they're also kind of paying respect to these people that you know, other black artists in the past, all the way back to Robert Johnson, moving a little bit forward to Marvin Gaye, moving a little bit forward even more to Notorious B.I.G. It just seems like this great sort of celebration of who they are as a band and some of the things that influenced them, I guess. But yeah, this is easily the best album they did since Stain, which was, you know, however many years, 15 years prior or something like that. I don't know. It's more than that. Shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Shade came out, it was a thing where the Who Shot Ya single had come out before this, and I already thought that was fucking great. And so this was an album that like I pre-ordered it. Once it popped up, I'm like, all right, I'm pre-ordering Shade. And then as I read more on it, I was just like, I really was kind of like, oh, this may not really be great. This might be similar to how I feel about the previous 2, and if the production isn't that good, oh man, what are we gonna get here? I didn't know what to think, but once I heard the whole album, I felt like you felt. I was just like, God, this is awesome. It makes me as a fan feel good that like they have put something this good out this far along in their career, and makes me feel better for the future for this band. Like, what could they do next? And like I said, I think they still got more left to give to us.
Hell yeah!
But yeah, that's so my number 4 is also Shade, and then we are now going to be entering into what I would like to call the unfuckwithable zone of Living Color. So whatever order these go in for, I don't care because there are arguments for all of them being number 1, 2, and 3. What do you got for your number 3?
My number 3 is Stain.
Nice. Okay.
This one has a much darker edge to it in both sound and imagery. Like, They dropped the fluorescent colors. They weren't doing like the bright neon stuff. Like the music videos were very, very black and brown. You know, that there was a distinctive shift towards like a more serious tone. It's a lot more. It definitely like. It just feels like a more mature version of their classic sound.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I don't know how much it has to do with it, but it is their first album with Doug Wimbish on bass, who is he's a slightly different kind of bass player than Muzz Scullings, but he's still fucking fantastic. I mean, they literally just went from one fantastic bass player to another. Did I just call him Muzz Scullings? I meant Muzz Skillings.
I didn't want to say anything.
You know when you say something and then you go, did I just pronounce that the way that I think that I pronounced it? Anyway, yes, but yes, Doug Wimbish is on this one. But I feel like them working with him, because I do think that they collaborated songwriting wise, and so maybe that may have led to this kind of being a darker kind of album.
Yeah, like right out of the gate, you got "Go Away," which is essentially a groove thrash song, which is a big fuck yeah from me. Right out of the gate, this album lets you know you're in for a heavier ride. Also, there's an awesome breakdown in the middle. "Ignorance is Bliss" is a song that just perfectly exudes the band's energy. If you're a Living Color fan, there's like I don't know how to describe it. It's just like there's these moments where you think to yourself, only this band sounds like this part going on right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there are some parts where I would hear it out of context and I would think that's those four dudes. Like there's no other band on this planet that makes that specific sound.
Mm-hmm.
Leave It Alone is a groovy, vibey one.
Yeah.
Bye is a fun song because it talks about. Oh, sorry, I'll let you
I was going to
here.
say Leave It Alone. I don't know. It almost feels to me like Leave It Alone is the first time we hear keyboards in a living color. Well, at least that kind of keyboard, because there's like a prominent chords played on a keyboard during the song, and like every time I hear it, I go, if it was in older songs, it was more sort of buried in the mix maybe, but all of a sudden you hear these keys and I'm like, oh, that's a new thing for them. But I love the way it sounds with that song.
Hell yeah. It's like I was going to say here, Bye is a fun song.
Everybody wants you when you're by. Yep.
Loving other girls and other guys.
Hell yeah.
Oh man. Like it's something as well that a lot of hard rock bands in the 80s would have stayed the hell away from, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm really straight. I'm dressed like a chick, but I'm straight as fuck, dude.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Living
like
Color they never shied away from any sort of social commentary of any kind or political.
Yeah, which is cool. Like, it kind of reminds me how Roddy Bottum was always, he was very out with it.
Yeah.
In Faith No More, with like Be Aggressive and whatnot.
But, you could compare some Faith No More to Living Color, and maybe that has, like, they both seem like similarly open-minded bands, not just socially but musically as well. And so I guess there's something similar there,
Yeah, it's definitely. That's why I love like the late 80s and early 90s, because you got this massive surge of all these bands that don't sound like anyone and are up for anything,
That's when is that going to ever happen again? I hope it happens again, but like just off the top of my head, you had bands like even some bands that would later influence other bands, but like, everyone from like Jane's Addiction to like King's X. Like, there's all these bands that just literally, I can't think of another band that sounds exactly like that band. And they're all late 80s, early 90s time frame kind of bands. And that's why that's why I'll always agree. Like, that's the best fucking music. Late 80s, early 90s is just like the best shit happened.
I tell you what, it's kind of like the bands in the late 80s and early 90s looked at the rules of like music that came before it and went, that's fucking stupid.
Yep.
And then there was a glut of bands that turned up that sounded just like them, and they went, oh god damn it, now we're the uniform. It's like, And I think that's why it kind of went back the same way, because now you've got all these like fucking elitists out there that are like, you're wrong for liking this more than this. No, it's a subjective fucking opinion.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But there's just this lovely pocket in time from about like 87 to about 94 where there's just this huge glut of bands that just sound like themselves. They're not trying to be anything other than what they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really cool. But like, speaking of things sounding like other bands, Mind Your Own Business reminded me of Bleach era Nirvana, especially in the chorus, with a very similar riff to Mr. Mustache. But it still sounds so cool, and they fuck with the tempo so much as well. That sounds amazing, and every now and again I'll hear a riff from another band and it'll either sound amazing or kind of like it's a bit similar, but here it's like they took something that is pretty much the same, probably not even took it. They just did it themselves.
Yeah.
And it sounds so organic. Yeah. I think that's the landing zone I was trying to get to there.
I think that's the one thing is I do think that there are some people really are very quick to point out a riff sounding like another riff, but I feel like, especially maybe because I've written songs for like 30 years of my life, that I kind of hear when it's just a coincidence and when it seems like they actually took the riff. But even then, on top of that, you have to remember that you may hear a riff and completely forget the song and the artist, and years later it comes back into your brain and you may just write that having no fucking clue. So that's why whenever somebody would be like, no, they're ripping them off, I'm like, well, you don't know that for sure. I don't think they sat there and said, oh, this is a really cool riff, but we're just going to take this and make our own song out of it. Like, I think that the times that that's actually happened is probably 0.01% of the time that riffs sound similar. I think most of the time it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, a big one for me was I was in a rehearsal room with a band and we were just screwing around and we were like, hey, do you want to come up with like a really quick, stupid 20-second song to just throw in our set just for a laugh? And we were like, what's a funny phrase? And someone just went, shut the fuck up. And we just decided, that's it. We're going to write a song right now in the next 10 minutes just called Shut the Fuck Up. It's going to be 20 seconds long. And I came up with a riff around it. It's like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. Only to find it was Mr. Johnson by Scatterbrain. And I went home and I was like, oh, come on. Let me have this one, please. You know?
I mean, but you didn't mean to do it though. It just came out of you that way. Like I think we talked about it before. There's a more recent Alice in Chains song where they have a riff that I wrote years before, and I know that they didn't hear it. Same thing with one of the first songs I ever wrote when I was a kid. Well, I don't know what I was like 14, 15. I don't remember how old I was, but I was writing a song, and I remember these the way I played these particular chords and the way I did this sort of soft, sort of ballady little song. And I was like, okay. And then I recorded it on a tape and then I never went back to it again. And then like a year or two later, the song Glycerine by Bush comes out and I go, whoa. but now if you listen to that riff, it is a basic as fuck riff. So of course they came up with a similar riff. But if I was a total asshole, I'd be like, nope, it's on this one tape that I did back in 1992, and you're gonna hear it, and you're gonna owe me money, even though you know for sure they didn't come into my bedroom and listen to the tape. So anyway, but great minds, I guess, you know.
Hell yeah, awesome. Like we should all just find all of the musicians in the world that have had their riffs accidentally stolen and got really successful, and just group sue every band in existence.
We're all going to end up suing each other for something at some point, I think.
It's just going to be this endless web of just suits and lawsuits and shit.
Speaking of lawsuits, Stain, I don't know if you know the story about why Stain very quickly went out of print after it came out. So here's a funny story. So the album comes out in 93, and in 1994, this guy sues Living Colour. He goes by the artist name The Stain, and he sues Living Colour for calling their album Stain. And in his lawsuit, he claims that his music is far superior to theirs, which is the big problem, that they're putting the word Stain, which is his artist name, on an inferior product. And so because of that, the album went out of print. They didn't make any more of them because of the lawsuit. And I don't even know what ended up happening after that, because they ended up putting out a vinyl version of it years later. But funny post note to that story, he also sued the band Stained. for the exact same thing. And literally this, as far as I know, this is just a dude that does like incidental music for television or something. And he just refers to himself as the Stain. And I'm all
wow.
I mean, this motherfucker really is a stain, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm like, I just want to meet the guy and be like, you are just a piece of shit. Like they didn't call, not only is their album not called The Stain, they literally used a word that everyone uses. It's one fucking word. Like you have to be some sort of conceited piece of shit if you think that they called it Stain. Clearly they're trying to interfere with my music as The Stain. And it's just every time I read part of that story, because there hasn't been a lot of updates, but every time I go back to it, I'm just like, what a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Dude's like,
what a shithead.
What a shithead. But yeah, so for a while you couldn't get Stain, but now you can. It's out there.
Wow. Yeah, I did wonder why this album didn't do better, and I imagine that Shit Stain probably was a good reason it didn't do.
I don't know, because that was a year later. I think when this album came out, it wasn't grunge enough, and so I don't think. First of all, I don't think it caught any new fans. I think fans that were already fans from Time's Up, I think were into Stain, but I don't think it caught new people. So it didn't continue to build on their popularity. And they probably lost some people because they got darker, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, wow, was that the biggest tangent we've ever done? I've forgotten where I'm at.
Sorry. Just to make you feel better about all my interruptions, Stain is also my number 3. So let's just continue the Stain conversation of our joint number 3.
Oh, no worries, dude. I fucking love this album. There we go. Auslander is a brutally funky assault on racism.
That's probably one of my favorite Corey Glover deliveries is the chorus of that song. I love the way he sings that chorus.
Yeah, like there's so much fucking clout behind it as well. It's just such a hard hitting song as well, considering the subject matter and I watched the video as well. This is a funny thing to mention actually. I watched all of the music videos for this episode because I just found they were always very visually entertaining as much as they are musically.
Yeah.
For some reason, their music videos were always just like top fucking notch. But yeah, I watched this one and it's clear that they're taking a more serious tone. I mean, they always had social commentary in their songs, but like this is like the more seedy, much darker stuff. Mm-hmm. Like instead of a billionaire eating a cake of the world while everything falls apart around him, it's now literal neo-Nazis going around breaking into homes and shit. And it's like,
well, I mean, you have to remember socially, like this is also like between the time period of when Time's Up came out and when this came out, the Rodney King thing had happened, and they even there's even a reference to it in the song "This Little Pig." So I think that it was a really odd time because I remember as a young person. So in 1993, what would I have been? 15, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
I just remember at the time, you could feel the racial sort of, there was a racially charged feeling in the air. And at the same time, it felt like those of us who were more forward thinking and more accepting of everybody, it felt like we were pushing forward through the old school bullshit. Like the overall feeling was there's still racism out there. We have to get fucking rid of it now. Like we have to be very vocal about how we feel, which is funny because back in 1993, if you would have asked me in 25 years, is there still going to be problems with racism? I would have said, I wouldn't think so. Look, I mean, we're already making a lot of progress right now. I think in 25 years, everything's just going to be fine. And it's fucking not.
Here we are.
Yeah. And so it's it's interesting when you bring that up, because listening to a lot of their stuff, especially their early stuff, I do remember just having that feeling overall that, because I've always been very, like, racism to me is just as baffling as pedophilia. Like, like somebody wants to have sex with a child and I go, there's something fucking wrong with you. And then if somebody hates somebody because of their race or nationality or whatever, I view it the same way, where I'm just like, there is literally something wrong with you. And hopefully it can be corrected before somebody gets hurt or whatever. But so it's one of those things I've carried with me over the years. And I always feel very weird talking about this because we're just two white dudes talking about racism. But I
think it's good to raise the issue though, and make it known. That,
but it is one of those things where I feel like even today, just like in 1993, you have to be vocal about this stuff, because I think that's the only way that anything's ever going to make a difference. Like, just not being racist is not enough. Like, if something happens, you have to say something. And even if it's as little as, on that one day earlier this year where everyone put the all black pictures in their Instagram feed or whatever. Like, that doesn't seem like you're doing something, but you are, because people are seeing it, and so I don't know. It's because eventually all it takes is the one, like, well, why are they doing this? Let me go look at, it's like, it's literally just like a thing where you have to make some kind of statement and you have to make yourself known. And Living Colour was a great band for that. But I mean, they were also for African Americans. And so, of course, that would be an important thing for them. But Stain, but you're correct that it does feel like, they already tackled the issues of racism several times, but it almost feels like now it's a much more like, look, we tried to tell you this shit before, and you wouldn't fucking
bright
listen
clothes to get your attention.
Whatever, it just seemed like, you motherfuckers aren't listening. And then that's the feeling I get from songs on this album. It's like, if you need to be knocked over the head with it, here you go,
Yeah. It's like the first two albums are like, not in a sense of quality, but definitely in a sense of like meaning it. And I feel like Vivid and Time's Up, from like meaning perspective, are kind of like warning shots where it's like, come on, I'm giving you the chance to correct this shit. Time's up. This is your last fucking warning, dude. And then
time's up.
Yeah. And then Stain is what they're mopping up afterwards after they beat you to
literally
a pulp.
The stain.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So where were we? We're still on Ostlander, aren't we?
I think I'm gonna move it on over to Never Satisfied.
Yeah.
Which is another track that's just uniquely Living Colour. Now, Nothingness is really interesting because that song gave me Faith No More mixed with New Jack Swing vibes.
Yeah. I can see that.
The keys, the strings on that, I was like, that sounds so cool and different. And there were similar qualities to Faith No More that I loved, but it doesn't sound like Faith No More. I was just like, those keys sound really cool there, and this is around the same time as Angel Dust.
Yeah.
But again, it's that case of they don't sound like they're trying to sound like anything. It's just like they had a cool idea and they made it happen.
Yeah, it has a similar vibe.
Yeah, Postman is pure funk metal goodness.
Mm-hmm.
WTFF is this weird vibey hip hop soundscape kind of thing. And then you get this little piggy, which is proggy as hell at the start, then chaotic and punky, and then in the middle of the track, there's this nasty, gnarly, slow riff breakdown. And when that happened, I thought, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know that kind of half laughing oh shit vibe. I got that here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
No, I
oh
get.
fuck.
Yeah,
Like, Hemp is a cool spooky interlude. Wall has some like Primus energy. Like, I really enjoyed this one. And this song ticks all my boxes of early 90s rock and metal.
yeah.
TV
Always really loved how everything drops out when he says the word us. He says the wall between us, but everything else drops out as he says us and then comes back. I always thought that sounded really cool.
I love the way it completely falls apart at the end as well. They just like chopped all of the parts together, and TV News is a big psychedelic song to close out the album.
Oh, you're on the bonus tracks. Okay.
Oh, is TV News a bonus track?
Yeah, TV News is a bonus track.
Ah, okay. Like a lot of
That's all right.
this
It's good.
album, oh man, it is so good. A lot of this album sounds like what I would probably end up making if I said to myself, I'm going to make an early 90s inspired album, and here is what I'm probably going to end up sounding like. And not that I could nail Living Color's vibe, but, you know, there are a lot of things in here that I love about this era of music. So it would be like, that's like the kind of vibe I'd try to include. But, man, I've grossly neglected this album throughout the years.
Yeah.
I think solely because it was just always, I mean, it's not an album that a lot of people talk about outside of Living Color fans themselves. And it's like, it's kind of a shame that it kind of lives in the shadow of Vivid and Time's Up.
Well, shit, I think even Time's Up lives in the shadow of Vivid. You know, it's
true. Yeah.
I do think though that with Stain, I think a big reason why, because I noticed that with Stain, it's an amazing album, but I feel like I have to be in the right mood to really get into Stain. Whereas Vivid and Time's Up, I am always in the mood to listen to those albums. So maybe it is the fact that it's a little bit of a darker tone and mood on this album that sometimes you just got to be in the right headspace for it.
Oh yeah.
But like I said, this is also my number 3. Honestly, the only reason why this one came to number 3 was because every once in a while there are production choices that I don't quite get, and I don't know if they were on purpose or not, because sometimes there's a bit of unevenness with some of the tracks, with just certain parts. Like certain parts will happen, and I go, did they just totally turn up or lower the volume on something oddly for a second? And so, but it happens randomly where there's just little things here and there where I go, this isn't quite as a tight production package as I would want, but I've gotten so used to it over the years that it doesn't matter anymore. But I think at the time that was a big deal for me, as I didn't like the production as much as their first 2 albums. But this is just a fucking killer album with so many great songs, and I really do think that maybe the only thing I can add is that maybe this feels a little less lively, and that makes it my number 3, because the things that initially drew me towards Living Color and have made me a fan overall is this sort of like their stuff feels so alive, like like it feels like you're listening to things just happen, even though they're written and calculated and structured songs. Occasionally you'll hear them and go, this feels like it's just coming out of them, as they're doing it. And Stain's a little less. It has a little less of that. Although there's still so many fucking good things on here. And that means also, so at this point we do get the Living Color lineup that is still around today, with Doug Wimbish on bass. And I mean, it's fucking great. I don't really know what else to add after I feel like we spent a long time on Stain, but it is really good. But you are right. It's underrated and it doesn't get talked about enough. But honestly, I don't think overall Living Color is a band that gets talked about enough. You don't see them pop up all over the place, and it always blows my mind because I'm just like, people will do things like name off amazing bands from, amazing albums from 1988, and sometimes Vivid won't be on there, and I'm just like, what are you even talking about? like just take your list and shove it up your ass, because there's no point anymore. But anyway, so Stain is one that should get a lot more love than it does, but I like the two before it more, and so that's why it's my number 3. So let's move on to our number 2. Let's see if we are going to match up all the way to number 1. Let's find out what happens.
I have sneaking suspicion, knowing you, having done this podcast for almost a year. Mm-hmm. I have a sneaking suspicion we could do a crisscross on our last 2.
You also might be wrong.
Okay.
I think I know what you're thinking, and if you are thinking what I think that you're thinking I'm thinking, then you're wrong.
Okay, so I've gone at number 2 for Time's Up.
No, we are literally we are right next to each other. This is going to be the most matchy that one of our episodes has been, I think, so far.
I was going to say, the biggest one I can think of is the Helmet episode, which was
that was also very similar.
Yeah.
But yes, man. Time's Up's not to give it away, but fuck it. Time's Up's also my number 2. So let's just dig in to start talking about Time's Up.
Awesome. So, opening title track, Time's Up, is half right out of the gate. Yeah.
That is I love that song because it's so unexpectedly frenetic. Like they're, if Cult of Personality starts Vivid, and it's a great opener, but you don't expect something like Time's Up to begin this album, and I love this song.
Yeah, it's like part thrash punk at the start, and then goes funk metal, and then all of a sudden, out of fucking nowhere, there's this like crazy guitar solo in the middle that totally changes up. Was that Will Calhoun playing that crazy weird like kind of drum beat?
Let's take a moment here. First of all, let's take a moment. I know I've mentioned it before, but let's take a moment to talk about Vernon Reid because Vernon Reid is one of my favorite guitar players. He's probably up there. I'm not a guitar player guy in the sense where like I know who my favorites are, because I like certain guitar players for different things. But if you're talking about somebody that I consistently hear them and go, not only would I not be able to begin to do that, but I don't even know what the fuck he's doing. And Vernon Reid's one of those guys where he seems like a dude, because like I think all of these dudes, well, at least the 3 on this album, the bassist, the drummer, and Vernon Reid, I think they all had a background more in just doing like jazz or just your regular funk music or stuff like that. And Vernon Reid has always seemed like this dude that I've seen old footage of him playing with this jazz band, and even the jazz band was fucking crazy. Like the shit they were playing, I'm just like, is this even a song? Like, what the fuck is this? So it's almost like from the get-go, he was a guy that was just like, I can appreciate this straightforward R&B and this heavy metal, but I don't want to play necessarily either one of those things, but I want to play both of those things at the same time. So it's almost like I don't think there's another guitar player that plays like Vernon Reid. And he was the one guitar player where I thought it was cool that he wore his guitar like high up. Cause like when I started playing guitar, it was always like, no, you got to put your guitar down low and play it down low. And I was like, Vernon Reid wears his guitar like way up there and he looks fucking badass when he plays. Yeah. But I just always really liked how the band seemed unpredictable, but I really feel like the guy at the helm, I mean, it was his band, he put it together. But I always feel like he is the mad genius at the helm who's just like, I'm leading us into battle, and you guys, he got like the 3 best people that could keep up with him.
weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he is once again, just like Living Color is a band that I don't think gets talked about enough. I don't think Vernon Reid gets thrown into best guitar player conversations. And he should absolutely be included in that. Along with like fucking literally everybody in this band, especially at this point. Like I love the original run because I love Muzz Skillings as a bass player also. And I just think that these four dudes, as much as I still love the band today, these four guys, I don't know what it is, but you even watching them on stage, performances from this period, and I'm just like, they were just so fucking good, all four of them. And anyway, I wanted to take a moment. I'm sure I'll derail us eventually talking about somebody else, but got to give Vernon Reid a little bit of love because that dude will pull shit out of thin air that you're just like, I don't know where his head was, but we are all better people for it, you know?
He seems like real chill as well about it.
Yes.
Like he doesn't pull like the crazy guitar faces and stuff like that. Like, oh my God, I'm doing like a Sylvester Stallone face because I'm doing so much fucking bending right now.
Yeah.
He's just doing shit that's absolutely fucking wild with a straight face.
My favorite guitar face is the surprise guitar face where like they're like I can't even believe what I'm doing here.
It's like, is this the note? Did I find it? Oh man. I love the fact that we're only on track one as well.
Sorry.
No, it's I'm fine hanging out on these two because oh my God. Like, and then right after that, they hit you with an interlude that's like, you know, less than a minute long. It's called History Lesson. And it's you know, obviously has a lot of social commentary in it. It's very African influenced, and like the variations of styles on here, like obviously Vivid, which we'll get to, has a very genre smashing sound anyway, but with Time's Up they blew it out even further, you know. Pride, the groove on this song, good fucking Lord, when it comes in, like when they're all playing together, just that straight 4/4 beat, but with that riff over the top of it. Just feels good. You know, it doesn't just sound good, it feels good. And that's when you know a band knows what they're doing, you know? Because it's like, I've heard songs before where I'm like, yeah, the production is pristine, but there's no swagger here. This has like good fucking every time I put this album on, I don't know, like compared to Vivid, if you named a song off of here, I probably would be less likely to match it up with what it is. Like obviously you've got a few standouts, but there are a few on here that I forget which one is which. But when they do come in, I'm like, oh, I love this one. I can't believe I forgot its name.
That's the thing about the first two Living Color albums for sure for me. Like every track is a fuck yeah track once it starts. Like it's like to me, I'm always like fuck yeah, even though like I've heard these so many times. Just knowing that I'm getting to hear this song now. It's just got so many. There's just so many of those. Yeah,
and then out of the blue, you get Love Rears Its Ugly Head.
Yeah, one of their best in my opinion.
Oh man, and it's like a full-on jazz funk soul kind of thing, apart from like the chorus, which goes full-on rock. But I wish I still had the cover of this that my college band did for an assignment, because I fucking let rip on the vocals at the end.
Oh, but, you sang it?
Yeah, I was the front man.
Nice.
And the guitarist. Did
you do that part where he goes, my collar full of stars?
Yeah. Fuck yeah, I did it.
Awesome.
We also spent like a full rehearsal just getting that one moment down in the song where they go, like, oh no, not that part. It's like da da da. That little extra thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can't remember specifics, but oh my god, that part catches me off guard every time. But I'm like, oh, it didn't need to be there, but it's
Yeah.
so good. You know, it's just like a little bonus nugget that makes the listener go, oh, hell yeah. New Jack theme is what I would imagine a thrash band scoring a James Bond-esque spy movie with the help of funk musicians would sound like.
Okay, I like that. That's a good description.
Like there's a very James Bond feel to it, but at the same time it's got that like thrash appeal too. Someone Like You has got some great danceable grooves. Elvis Is Dead is too good.
Yeah,
I love, I
Absolutely.
love the guest appearance from Little Richard and the sax solo from I think is it Maceo Parker.
I don't know who does the. Hold on, let me look at it. Who does the sax solo on that? Yeah, it is Maceo Parker.
Yeah. Oh man, and like I said, I watched all the videos for this episode. The video to this is great. I love the opening where they're sat on that bench.
Yeah.
Where Will Calhoun says, "Yo, Corey, what's up, man? I saw Elvis the other day. Get out of here, man!"
Yeah.
It's an awesome, that's one of those music videos that just highlights how little anyone gave a shit about what anyone thought at the time.
Yeah.
Because it was like, we made this and it rules and it doesn't sound like anything you've ever heard. It's just, be my guest and let him rest. So good.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's that's what I was trying to say earlier about these albums is that unfortunately they already made these albums, and so they've already set this standard of them being a band that gives you shit that either you weren't expecting or didn't even know that you really wanted to have in your life. Like they'll give you the song that once you hear it, you're like, yeah, this is totally the sound that I want to hear, but I didn't expect it from the track previous to this track.
For sure. Type is outrageously catchy.
Oh, Type's an amazing song.
Love the video.
The structure of Type is so great to me because it does have the thing where you've got the sort of groovy verse part, and then the chorus goes into a more melodic thing, but then it has that middle section where it gets even more with the everything that goes around. Like when it gets into that, like I'm just like, and that's one of the things that I always sort of like to point out about their songs. Not all of them, but on every album they'll have a few songs that take you like, it almost feels like you're going on a little journey, even though the song is just five minutes, maybe 6 minutes at the most. Yeah. And just the fact that you feel, there's one in particular we'll talk about when we get to Vivid, where every time I listen to it, I'm just like, this is just such amazing songwriting. Like if the band released a 10-hour documentary just on the making of one album where you just watched them writing the songs, and then I would watch every minute of it.
Every waking second,
because it's just, I want to know how they came up with these parts.
I want to know. Give me a
exactly.
Yeah,
man, I love working in a band song into the conversation like that. But I just want because I'm interested in like, where did the song begin? What's the skeleton of the song? What little tweaks did they make in this song? Was this one part intended for a different song and they found a way to put it in here? Because it's just that those are the things that fascinate me, and that's what I think. Another one of the reasons why Living Colour is such a great band, because how many bands can I can't think of that many bands where I really just want to deconstruct everything they do, and I want to know, I want to take it apart and see how it came together in the first place, and Type's one of the perfect examples of that, because it's not a weird song at all, but it's put together in a way that I'm just like, this is fucking genius. This is just such great songwriting and performing, and they are just fucking awesome. Let's keep going.
I think the beautiful thing about this album as well is that I pretty much know Vivid inside and out.
Yeah.
But this album, I always hear new things. It's got like Angel Dust syndrome, where every time I listen to it, I hear something that, like, for some reason makes the song, but I didn't even notice it was there on the first, like, 20 listens.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to say before I get off of Type, I love the bit at the end where it's like, hey, everything that comes around, it comes around, it comes around.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that bit.
Yeah.
So good. Information Overload is awesome. That riff is pure mid-tempo thrash. There's a few thrashy moments on this album, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it actually, this one in particular gave me like that Sacred Reich American Way vibe. Like,
Same year too. Both came out the same year.
So fucking rad. And
that
then,
would have
like,
been, I don't know if Sacred Reich ever toured with Living Color, but that would have been a show that I would have really liked to have seen, that both of them playing together. I know Anthrax played with Living Color, and that would have been awesome.
It would totally make sense as well, as because, you know, Sacred Reich were always very open-minded. Hell, they got that 31 Flavors song.
Oh, hell yeah. Do they mention Living Color in that song?
I was about to say, do they mention them there?
I don't know. I know they mentioned the Chili Peppers, and I think Fishbone also, or something like that.
On the fly, I'm going to have a quick on-the-fly look.
See who all is mentioned. This is the song 31 Flavors by the band Sacred Reich, which is a song we've talked about before, where they talk about how they're basically encouraging listening to different kinds of music. You can really be into metal, but you don't, as he says in the song, you don't just be a metal dude, which I've always agreed with. It's just, that's why, like, it bums me out when people are they seem so close-minded towards different kinds of music, because I guess they think that it ruins their metal cred or something. I don't really know what it is, but it's an unfortunate mental problem that people have.
He doesn't mention Living Color, but he does mention Chili's, Faith No More, Metallica, Sting, Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, Prince, Fishbone, and NWA, and Mr. Bungle as well. So
there you go.
That's a wide cast of characters right there.
I guarantee you that they were also Living Color fans.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, all of those bands that they just listed are like the formula for this.
Yeah.
So good. Undercover Darkness is a funky, jazzy viber with a cameo.
Featuring Queen Latifah.
Queen Latifah doing a rap verse, which is like, again, they did Information Overload, which, you know, has that thrash vibe, and then all of a sudden you get this song, and it's got Queen Latifah on it. And it's so cool to hear that. Is Ology? I
think it's Ology.
Yeah, cool, weird, out there interlude. Fight the Fight. There's a lot of songs on this, but it doesn't outstay its welcome.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really seem as long as you look at it and you go, this is pretty long, especially for 1990. But Fight the Fight's a fucking great song. It's a real sort of understated kind of thing, but it's really good.
That's what I've put here. I put Fight the Fight is Living Color doing a damn fine job at being Living Color. You know?
Yeah.
They just fucking nail it. Tag team partners, beatbox interlude. In fairness, like 2 or 3 of the tracks on this record are like interlude kind of tracks. But then you get Solace of You. Is a perfect example of a band not being restrained by any genre.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't know any better and you told me that this was the band that made Cult of Personality, I'd be like, hey, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Guy.
Yeah.
And
there'd be no, there's no, they're completely different worlds, but it's awesome.
But at the same time, it completely makes sense for them. It's like, and then finally you get This Is the Life, which feels really doomy and bleak up until the end, where it closes out on kind of a positive message to alter some toxic perspectives towards your own life. And it's like, I really wanted, because they did like an updated 2020 version, live, and there were a lot of like what was happening in the world. I think it was last year with all of like the protests and
I
stuff.
don't know if I heard that.
Yeah, it was like a live performance. I think they
Okay.
just titled it "Living Color." This is the life 2020.
Oh, I'll have to go check it out. I don't know if I heard that.
Yeah, it's cool. They definitely spliced in a lot of footage from, the world falling the fuck apart,
Yeah.
But yeah, this album kicks ass and is underrated. All of their albums, even Vivid, is underrated, but
Yeah.
good Lord, this one especially needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
And Stain.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Shade.
And
they all need to be talked about.
And I'll talk about it a little bit more, actually, because Time's Up is also my number 2. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, I remember when this album came out, the thing that I liked the most about it is that I really did feel like they were a band that played by nobody else's rules.
Yeah,
and
love
there were other bands at the time that had similar vibes of just doing whatever the fuck they wanted. But these guys just seemed like they I don't know. It's almost like they were listening to everything, but then not really sounding like any of those things at the same time. I don't know. It's and also it's like it's got the big holdover 80s production style with the big drums and everything.
Love that.
And it's the last album with Muzz Skillings on bass. Now, this is an interesting thing. Whenever I listen to Living Color, especially when I watch any like live footage from back in the day, I really love Muzz Skillings as a bass player, watching what he does. And it got me thinking about rock and roll bass players. And most of the time, like, on the internet, people love to do lists, just like we're doing, where they want to go like, who are your favorite bass players? And in the world of metal, inevitably everyone's going to bring up like Cliff Burton, or something like that. And it almost seems like a lot of the time, the people that they like as bass players, I say they as in your average rock and metal fan, the bass players that they like seem to be bass players that find a way to make the instrument not sound like a bass guitar.
Yeah.
And so as blasphemous as it might seem to metalheads, I would never put Cliff Burton in my favorite bass players lists because there are bass players like Muzz Skillings that exist, where a dude plays the bass guitar like a bass guitar and fucking rules at it. And there are other bass players like that, and some of them are not so funky, but just the way that he played. I mean, I guess he still plays. I haven't heard anything that he's done post Living Color, but I know he did other shit. But I would always watch him play and be like, that was kind of the watching bass players like that is kind of what taught me about what a bass player was. I guess you could throw Flea. You could throw Flea into that equation, because he was a dude that the things he was doing stood out, but they were very much he was a bass guitar player. And so I would watch them and then be like this is what a bass guitar is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the rhythm section. It locks in with the drums and it helps the rhythm of the song and the groove of the song. And a great bass player literally just accentuates that part of it. But an amazing bass player will find a way to hold that down while at the same time throwing in little I don't know what you call them, flourishes or whatever. And I would hear that in Muzz's bass playing. I guess I also hear it with Doug, but it's one of those things that when I think about my favorite bass players, I'm usually thinking of bass players like that, because that's what I feel makes a good bass player. I don't need you to do this crazy solo where you've made it sound like a guitar and not a bass, because I'm like, that's not interesting to me. Or if you're making it this melodic thing that just sort of is kind of in the air around the music. I'm like, well, that's not a bass guitar. You're an amazing musician if you do things like that. I mean, because I can't do it, but for bass players, like I like somebody where you can hear them locking in with the drums. And who's the guy what's his name that plays bass for Rage Against the Machine? Timmy C.
Tim Comerford.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys, but he's not. I don't think he's amazing, but at least he plays by that rule that I like, where you can hear him fitting right in with what the drummer's playing, and I love that. And so, anyway, I just wanted to give Muzz a little bit of love because I feel like nobody talks about anybody except for Vernon Reid and Corey Glover. Like even Will Calhoun's amazing drummer that does shit.
Berkeley graduate.
Yeah, exactly. He's a fucking degree in music, but he still just manages to pull out shit where he never loses the groove, but he will find ways to switch things up in ways, even if it's just for a couple seconds, you'll go, oh, yeah. And so like you said, you do hear other things inside of these songs the more that you listen to them. And that's why I said earlier that I just feel like, Vernon found the three dudes that were able to match whatever level of badassness he had going on. And so I just think that's such a great thing. And I'm just by looking at, songwriting credits, I do feel like, each member brought in, a little bit of their own flavor, and God, they're just, I don't know, individually, I think they deserve just as much praise as the band all together. And, Time's Up actually might be my favorite overall album when it comes to Corey Glover's vocals. I love the way that he sounds. I mean, I love the way he sounds on anything. He's the textbook example of when somebody says that they could just sing the phone book. Like Corey Glover is one of those vocalists for me. I'm like, nah, whatever you want to sing. It sounds good to me. But yeah, Time's Up is amazing. I love how it's different enough from Vivid to sound like a progression, but also somehow oddly fits in like these two companion albums. Maybe the artwork has a little bit to do with it because there's an image that's on both album covers, and so maybe there is some of that going too. But in the end, the reason why I put this at number 2 is because we're going to talk about it in a minute, but it is really hard to follow up an album like Vivid. Really hard. And the fact that they were able to nail the things that they nailed and make an album like Vivid on the first go, that is why I had to put Time's Up at number 2, even though they're very close together. Like Time's Up to me is like a 1.0002. It's like right up there, with Vivid, but it had to be my number 2. But that's a great segue. Let's just move right in to talking about our joint number 1, Vivid, the fucking debut Living Color album. I'm sure I'll have plenty to interrupt you with, so if you just want to move into to your track by track.
No worries. Cool. So, Cult of Personality. This is the introduction for 99% of people to Living Color.
Yeah.
All the way back in the 80s when it first aired on MTV, right? And then you've got my generation that found it through GTA San Andreas, and if they didn't find it through GTA San Andreas, they found it through CM Punk, who had Cult of Personality as his entrance theme.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was like a re-recorded version, though. It's not the Vivid version, which is kind of like, okay, just use the fucking original.
He may not have been able to get permission to do that.
But I think it was like re-recorded by the band, so I was kind of like,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was strange, but oh, man, I don't
It
know.
is-
Actually, that might be the Guitar Hero version. See, a bunch of people found it through Guitar Hero too.
That too,
it
yeah.
was, yeah,
But I mean, there's something to be said about Cult of Personality, because I hold it up there with like Smells Like Teen Spirit, with a song
Yeah.
where the riff starts in the beginning of the song and it's just like, it feels like the most important thing that you could possibly be listening to, which is weird
Yeah.
because like this is such an overplayed song. Like if somebody was gonna say overplayed, I'd be like, yeah, because like I said, it's still played on rock radio all the time, and it's the one song, it's the signature Living Color song because you
Yeah.
know people just love it, but they love it for a good reason. That the riff starts like there's like that is a riff that will live in people's heads forever. That like how
Yeah.
can you write something? It's difficult to write something cooler than that riff, and it's just like I said when I was 10, it literally like blew my mind where I just went, "This is the sound I've been wanting to hear," and yeah, it's one of the best album openers ever. Like it's up there. It's just it sets the tone for you better get fucking ready. But then it doesn't really give you that much of an indication of where you're going to go, which is why the entire album fucking rules. But it's a great opener.
I think as well the coolest part about it is like there's that little bit at the start where it's like, what we want to do is talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand. Shit, do. Oh fuck yeah, this song rules. You know, it's that kind of like primal feeling. It just jumps right into you. But like, this is a perfect example of like a band perfectly locked into a groove. Like it's just so bombastic and loud and fuck yeah-ish, you know?
Yeah.
And then right after that though, like you get I Want to Know, which has some really catchy melodic vocal moments.
It's a more of a lighter vibe for the very second song, but I love that they immediately say you're not going to expect like whatever you think is about to happen, that's probably not going to happen.
Like there's a fucking doo-wop section in the middle of it. It's it ding 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 ding. But like takes a lot of guts to show you how I feel, about you. Like, oh, it's really cool to hear like those R&B vocals over the top of hard rock. You know, that kind of sensibility applied to it. Middleman is riff central.
Yeah.
Like, actually, upon like re-listening to it, it feels a little bit like Uplift Mofo era Chili Peppers at times to me. Like moments on this album definitely exude a similar vibe to that. And I love that, but it's certainly much meatier on this album. Desperate People.
That's where I'm pausing you.
Oh,
Desperate,
we're gonna screech people.
Desperate People. It might be my favorite Living Color song. It's up there. This is one of those tracks like I was talking about where you go on a journey with this song. The way that it begins is not the way that it ends up going, but it's just it's so well done. I think it's the whole package of it because it's the not just the song itself, but the 80s style of production on this. It lets everything breathe. Yeah. And I love that. I miss that about albums because now people I think are trying to get back to that, but the only thing they know how to do is turn the reverb way the fuck up. But I'm all like, well, that's not how you do it. But back then there were so many albums that, you know, there were some that were not as great, but there were so many that the reason why I think they translate so well to so many people is the fact that they were recorded in a way where everything just felt like you could hear everything. Like you turned up the volume really loud and nothing distorted. Every instrument could be heard perfectly what they were doing, but it still sounded like a band playing. And songs like Desperate People, just hearing the interplay between the guitar, the bass, the drums, and then Corey's vocals, it's just, and the way the song plays out, I just always hear this song and go, this is like album number one, and they are so good at writing songs. And at the same time, they're writing songs that they're simultaneously sounding like a band that could fit in everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And I love that. And Desperate People is just such a good, that's like a song that like everybody should know, but you have to be a fan of this particular album to know that song because it wasn't released as a single. But I mean, I guess it wouldn't really work that well as a single because if you edit it down at all, it's not as good. Like it's got to be the full on, 5.5 minute running time or whatever for you to really get the song the way you're supposed to. But it's fucking great. I had to talk about that one.
That's cool because I'm going to really elaborate on that with Open Letter to a Landlord.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Wait, I didn't do my trademark. I haven't had one of these yet.
Okay.
Open Letter to a Landlord.
Yeah.
So, like, this could be my favorite song next to Cult of Personality. Mm-hmm. Like, this one right here, so goddamn good. The mixture of melody and funky heaviness in this, good fucking Lord. Like, it's it starts off with it. You could tear a building down, but you can't, doing all of those, like,
that almost sounded like Michael McDonald the way you were singing it.
Raise a memory. Last night there was a fire. I saw several children die. Can you imagine Michael McDonald delivering that line?
He was probably mad that he didn't get to do any backing vocals because he was on like every fucking album in the 80s.
Man, like, when I hear this song, when I hear it open up, the first time I ever heard this, this is a song I wish I could hear for the first time again.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I had no idea where it was going. When it started off, I thought, oh, we're 5 tracks in. This is probably going to be the ballad here, Mm-hmm. Boy, was I fucking wrong. Because the moment that, like, really nice gospel kind of thing finishes at the start, all of a sudden you're just punched right in the face with pure funk, metal, hard rocking fucking perfection. And I love that it retains the alt rock kind of thing underneath that gospel influenced chorus, because they managed to work it back in but maintain some of the intensity. And then when it gets to that bridge before the solo, that where they're using the harmonics and stuff, like
yeah, it's great.
I love that as well. Like, he could have just gone chug, 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 done like sort of what every fucking metal band has done for the last 20 years. But like, that shows to me that's someone adding flavor to something.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't need to put like little quirky, jerky harmonics there. But
I think that's
so
just, it's
good.
a testament to like the overall vibe of, I guess, I mean, because there was a lot of bands like that, like we've said, but I feel like back then a lot of musicians and a lot of songwriters would go, we've written this song, I've written this part, it's really fucking cool, let's see how we can make it better. Like, it was never, whereas now I think that there's so much of an emphasis on just, we wrote a song. It's like that Tenacious D thing. Next song. It's like, guess who wrote that song? Me, baby. It's like, so it's more just like, it's like, how many, we're done writing that song. That's good enough. Like, I feel like there's so much good enough in the world musically. And so you don't hear little things like that. And what you mean, I get some bands you do. I'm not going to totally blanket every fucking band out there, but there's so much less of it now, where everything is very bland and they just, this is good, let's not fuck with this anymore. And I'm like, sometimes you need to fuck with it just to make things like what we're talking about. They're memorable moments that, sure, maybe a lot of people hear and then it just kind of passes them by. But there's always going to be people like us out here that pick up on those things, and it makes the song so much better for us.
Some of my favorite moments in songs happen like once throughout the entire runtime and never happen again.
Yeah.
You know, that's what makes them so memorable. Like, good God, man. And then Funny Vibe. You know, my favorite version of this one is actually like the super hip hop one in the music video.
Yeah.
But I love the progginess of the album version at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of where like the remaster with the bonus tracks on it, or at least a re-release, I don't know if it's a remaster, but it has both versions on it. And it's got like the video version at the end. Oh, but that song is so cool. Memories Can't Wait is a Talking Heads cover, but it fits with the vibe of the album.
It was years before I knew that was a cover song, and then I am not a Talking Heads fan, and so once I saw that, I was like, well, you know what? Good for them. I'm never going to go listen to the original, so so I love their version, and so I'm just going to consider this a Living Color song.
Hell yeah. And then you get Broken Hearts, which is a nice ballad with
that's
Mick Jagger.
That is
on the harmonica.
But yeah, Mick Jagger was a big deal with this band in the beginning. I think that he was a big champion of them. Like he was pointing.
Took them on tour.
He took them on tour, but I think even prior to that, I think he recorded some demos for them or something. And once fucking Mick Jagger's name is associated with your band, I think you're going somewhere, you know. And
itself,
there's a great moment in one of their live videos where it's footage from them playing with the Rolling Stones, and they're all up on stage together, I think doing It's Only Rock and Roll, and Vernon Reid starts doing a solo, but he remains like kind of further back into the stage, and Keith Richards comes up and shoves him forward. Yeah. And I just love that moment because I'm all like, that's a testament to how humble Vernon Reid is, but then how fucking cool Keith Richards is. He's just like, get the fuck up there, dude. You're badass. And like, I mean, really, like by all accounts, the dudes in Rolling Stones are great dudes. But just, I love moments like that where you just see parts of people's personalities without them actually talking, you know? And I love that. But yeah, that was a really good tour for them because they got to play in front of all sorts of people that I think they would have never played in front of. But Mick Jagger is like, I mean, if he was into my band, I'd be like, all right, well, I don't know about now. All the young people are so jaded. They're just like, well, he's an old guy. He was relevant back in the Stone Age.
Clout chasing motherfucker just wants to get on my mixtape.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that one. Who was it that did a song with Paul McCartney, and all these people were like, "Well, Paul McCartney needed the publicity, obviously, because he did a song." Was it Taylor Swift or somebody? And I'm just look, I know that you're young, but don't be young and an idiot. You know, Paul McCartney doesn't need anything. Neither does Mick Jagger. They're fine.
One of my favorite things was when Post Malone did that song with Ozzy Osbourne.
Yes.
And all those people that never even, I suppose, like, there's people now that never saw the Osbournes show, which is why everyone my age knows Ozzy Osbourne. Even if they're not like a metal fan, they still know him. Oh, that's that funny old rocker dude on the TV that's married to Sharon. You know, even if they know nothing of his music career, they still know who he is. And then you had all of these like kids born in like 2006 that are like, hey, props to Post Malone for, you know, showing off this this guy, Ozzy Osbourne, clearly an up and comer. You know, it's like the dude's like the figurehead for a fucking genre for the last 50 years.
Yeah, and really the fail there is not that they thought that, because that's fine. But do your research a little bit and find out, oh, okay, he's already well known. And then, but that's the whole point. Like, it's like, that's why like I have no problem with these things, because if some musician, no matter what genre they are, is collaborating with somebody from a totally different genre, I always think of it as, well, one or two of them is going to get exposed to different people, and that's always a good thing, in my opinion. So even if it's not a good song, I'm just like, great, I'm glad you did it. Fuck yeah, you know. But that's I think that's also what makes me not as good of a metalhead, because I think I'm supposed to be more like, you can't do that. Lady Gaga can't be on the stage with Metallica. She fucking ruined it. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. And I'm just like, really? That's the worst thing you've ever seen? Okay, well, you haven't seen enough bad shit, apparently.
I actually went back and listened to that first Lady Gaga album, and I forgot how many absolute bangers are on that album.
Yeah, absolutely. Look out for our Lady Gaga episode coming soon.
I don't know about it. I think we pissed a lot of people off with Fresh Prince.
Fuck
but
that.
I'm down.
I love pissing people off. We'll do Lady Gaga. We'll do fucking.
That's it. We're ditching the pink zebra stripes. We are officially only gonna do teeny bop, kids bop shit from the early 2000s, and it's all going to be bubblegum pop.
Are we going to do? I for a second there, I thought you were like we're going to rank the kids bop albums or the kids.
I mean, let's fucking do it. Let's rank the kids bop albums, dude.
They're all ranked at number 0. I'm an open-minded dude, but fuck those albums. Come on, man. Play your kids the real songs, okay?
Yeah. God damn.
I'm sorry. That was a major derail right there. Where were we at? We were at Broken Hearts, which I love Corey's vocals on Broken Hearts. It's fucking great.
It's a very heartfelt song.
But then we get
Glamour Boys.
I ain't no glamour boy. I'm fierce. Yeah.
I actually only just found out, before recording this podcast, yesterday, that it's I ain't no glamour boy. I thought he was saying I am a glamour boy, and I was like, it was like a misheard lyric. I thought he was being ironic.
Well, okay, I get you. Like he was like, the verses are supposed to be. I guess because that would make sense, because the verses are about the glamour boys, and then he would sing in the chorus, "I am a glamour boy," but no, it's "I ain't no glamour boy. I'm fierce." Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also quite campy now. Like, if you hear someone say "I'm fierce," it's like I don't know. It's just very flamboyant. And
I guess maybe that was the point. I don't know. It doesn't. It sounds awesome to me when they say it in the song.
Oh hell yeah! I fucking love this song, and
also again, the music video has a cameo by Scott Ian from Anthrax.
Oh man,
I don't know. Maybe there's other Anthrax dudes in it also, but I know that Scott Ian's in it.
That's awesome, man. I love the little cameos. Apparently, one of the people poking Chuck Mosley in the cage in the video for Anne's song is James Hetfield.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and apparently the extra hand that is on the guitar when Jim Martin's doing that solo where there's 2 hands on the neck. Uh-huh. Apparently, I think that's James Hetfield. I'm not 100% sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, but fact check that first. I'm
okay.
I could be wrong, but yeah.
We look up James Hetfield hand job and then see what.
Oh man! Don't do that.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah. And then you get "What's Your Favorite Color?" I think it's so cool for a band to have a theme song. How cool is that?
Yeah.
They have their own theme song.
Which funny enough, the show In Living Color would have a theme song that sounds like they may have ripped this song off a little bit. Which is interesting. I think I read somewhere that they wanted Living Color to do a song for it, and they said no, and so they just. I mean, I don't know if it's just a coincidence once again that they made a song that just sounded similar, but whatever. I mean, this one is just a fun, just an overall fun song.
Hell yeah! And finally, "Which Way to America" is such an energetic closing track.
Shout out to Muzz Skillings on the bass guitar for that slap bass.
So freaking good.
Yep.
And those Corey Glover screams, like, near the end, where he just never ever did it again. But
he did them live.
Like,
he would do them live during certain songs, but I think that's the only recorded one where he does those screams.
Yeah, it's like insane. It's like a shriek.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of anything else that sounds like it in this style of music. But man, Vivid, what a fucking ride, dude.
It's amazing. Also my number one. It's like one of the most confident debut albums I think that's ever been made. Like, it's up there with like your Appetite for Destructions and albums like that, where a band comes right out and it seems like they've already, I guess, they've been playing together as this version of Living Colour for a couple years. So, they weren't brand new, but, first album, the fact that it's this fucking good, not just in performances, but in songwriting, overall vibe, everything about this album. It's just an absolute classic, and to me, it's aged really well. Like, you could point out things here and there that sound very dated to the 80s, but even then, it almost feels like they have a weird way of sounding kind of timeless, while they literally do sound also of the time, because it's, I don't think that a band like Living Colour could have ever happened at any other time. I think it had to have been around the mid to late 80s. But to me, this is pretty much a perfect album. Like, I can't think of anything that I would want to change from it. And it's just literally fuck yeah songs one after the other. And the big reason why this was my number one is, like I said before, that I could talk about things about Time's Up that I think are better than Vivid, but overall as an album, Vivid not only it's the thing that started it all. And so I feel like it's the most important. Like, it leads to everything else, and it isn't a band giving us something that's pretty good and then they get better. I mean, because they did continue to do good shit, but they already started out with something amazing, and so something that a lot of people were probably like not even expecting. And then like me as a kid, I was just like, this is like all sorts of badass to me. And it opened up this album in particular is responsible for me opening up to other music. Like, I got into soon after this, probably a year or two later, bands like the Chili Peppers and King's X, and bands that would eventually, be known by millions. But, at the time they were smaller bands, but I would hear things that incorporated like funk. Like, I guess Faith No More was a big thing too. Like, later, like a year later, but I would hear things that incorporated different types of music, but it was guitar driven rock and roll. And that became the kind of thing that I wanted to hear. Like, I don't want to hear just your basic rock song anymore. Yeah. And so I was constantly looking for, how do you take this rock and roll thing and give me something different with it? And everything that I was discovering after this, it's, a couple years later, getting into Anthrax and getting into thrash metal and actual metal. And it was always the search for something that I hadn't already heard or something that excited me. And the 80s and early 90s just kept delivering with, I would just hear another album and be like, this is another thing that's like, it's like, I don't really remember, a lot about myself as a young person. Like, I remember feelings and I remember things that happened, but I'm pretty sure I was probably annoying to all of my friends, because I would probably show up every other week with like, no, this is the best album that you've ever heard. And then 2 weeks later, I'd be like, no, this is the best album you've ever, because that's how it felt.
That's me.
It felt like I was constantly discovering this new great stuff. And I really do think Vivid was the beginning of that. It was the beginning of knowing that there was more out there. And man, I fucking love this album. And I love this band. Like it's I may have had more criticisms about their more recent stuff, but I don't know. It's really when we rank these bands, especially a band like this, or even when we did Soundgarden, it always feels really weird putting any album lower, because you're like, well, yeah, no band can do an album just as good as the one before all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Like, some bands gradually get better with albums. Some bands start off great, and then they continue to put out good albums. And then obviously we've done some that started out great and ended up complete shit. But I mean, it always feels very weird to me. That's why I always try to say, when I talk about our podcast, I always say it's a podcast where we rank albums where the ranking isn't really that important. Like, the conversation about these albums is what's important, especially to me with a band like Living Colour, where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable ranking anything. This band, I really feel like every album brings me something that I love. And they really connected with me in sort of a weird way that I can't really explain, because there are those certain bands. Metallica is one of those bands, and like Anthrax and Rush and Aerosmith. Like, these are all bands that, sure, I like their music, and I could talk to you about technical reasons why I like their music. But at the end of the day, there's a thing that I'll never be able to explain, and that is an emotion that I feel when I listen to their stuff, or even just when I think about the guys in the band, like the 4 guys in Living Colour. I just think about it and go, I just feel something about them just makes me feel like I love them and what they did and what they continue to do. You see them play now, and they still nail all of these fucking songs that they play. And I think that's probably why I think that when it comes to a band that started in the 80s that's still going today, like, they're up there with one of those that I think still can hold their own and don't feel like they're just treading water or keeping shit going. Like, what do we call them? Like a legacy band or whatever, where it's just like a greatest hits package that tours sometimes. They don't feel like that. And so I love that we talked about them today.
Awesome.
Do you have any closing thoughts?
I mean, this collection of albums, I mean, save for the 2 at the bottom, some of the most flawless stuff we've ever talked about on this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's like Living Colour as well. I would say maybe not a top 10, but quite possibly a top 20 band for me.
Yeah. And I really do. And I know that we put out some episodes and it looks like not a lot of people listen to them.
Yeah.
And I really hope this isn't one of them. Because I if anything, I hope this is a podcast episode that maybe some people will hear it and go, oh, I'm going to go back and revisit these. Because this is, out of all the bands we've done, this is probably the one where I'm like, I hope this makes people go back and realize that the band isn't called Cult of Personality. They're Living Colour, and they've done so much good shit.
Hell yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that wraps it up. We broke 2 hours with this one, which that's a good sign.
Totally.
So that was fun. So Living Colour, we've done it. We've ranked it, and we are one of those words. I believe next time we're going to tackle another big one. That's what she said. it's a big one that has been a long time coming. That's all I'm going to say.
For sure.
It is we the fact that the two of us have not already done this band is well, I mean, I won't say anything else.
It's okay.
We're
sure,
gonna do it.
I'm sure I don't want to admit that I kind of shit the bed on our first recording session.
We'll talk about that when we get there, though.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so be ready for that. Those of you who are the peanut butter platypuses out there that make it through all of our shit, we appreciate you. You're the best.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, we'll be back next week, starting another big one, and it'll be fun. It'll be a similar vibe to this one.
Yeah.
Where we'll get excited about what we're talking about. My voice is going out, man. I try so hard because I get to the point where my voice is just like, you've been talking way too much. That shows how much I normally talk, because like in my day-to-day life, like for my job, I don't have to talk.
That sounds like paradise.
If I'm not talking to my wife or my daughter, I'm not talking. And so like we do these things, and all of a sudden I'm just like, oh man, my voice is just like giving out on me. I'm sorry, nobody needed to hear that.
No, it's okay. Like honestly, sometimes when I'm at work, I have to talk too much, and it's like,
oh yeah,
I feel my voice going. I work in retail, and my idea of a bad day is whenever I hear service team 1 to check out, service team 1 to check out, and it's like, oh God, now I'm a cashier. You know, it's like, now I have to talk to people. And it's like every now and again I'll get a really grumpy old person and I'll think, thank you. I don't have to speak to this person. You know?
Yeah. Whenever I go to the grocery store, normally the amount of conversation that I will have with you is, how are you today? Good to hear. And then that's and then at the end of it, I'll say, thanks, have a good day, or see ya, or that's it. In between, I'm all like, if you want to talk to me, that's fine, but I'm not going to engage a conversation with you because I just want to get my shit and get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, because for me, I won't dive too deep, but I find it exhausting after a while having the same conversation with a different person like every 5 minutes.
Yes.
Like especially, I know I'm talking about retail at this point, but
thanks for sticking around for the Living Color episode. Talk about our jobs.
Well, like there was a point where I had to admit to myself, dude, you can't keep this up. You're going to burn yourself out just talking about the fucking weather to every single person you see. Like, there are only so many times you can bring up the rain before you legitimately go insane.
But also, that's the number one indicator that person has nothing to talk about. If anyone brings up the weather, I'm just like, clearly you have nothing to talk about. How about just say good afternoon or whatever, and then say thank you when you leave, or what? There's no need to go any further than that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it is funny how some people do have the same conversations. I'm gonna do like a quick story that everyone can tune out if they want to. But when I used to, at the job I have now, I work from home now, but I used to actually be at the office, and there were these dudes who were like these nerdy, like techie guys, and I would get to work in the morning at the same time as them, and inevitably on Monday morning, they all would have gone to see the same movie, whatever the movie was. If there was a sci-fi movie, that's what they went to see, or a horror movie or whatever, but they were like geeky guys. And the conversation literally always went like this. So did you go see the movie on Friday? I did, yeah. What'd you think? It was great, except for all the plot holes.
Yeah.
Like that was, I heard them have this conversation, and one of them would always say the phrase, "It was great except for all the plot holes," every Monday. And I was just like, God damn it. It's just like, how, like you have nothing to say about it. And it's like, because I always wanted to be like, could you explain the plot holes? Because like, usually they're really insignificant. Like, well, where did she get that stick from? It wasn't on the table prior to that. I'm like, Okay, dudes. Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't mean to drag that on, but if you learned anything from this, it's if you don't have anything to talk about, it's perfectly fine just to shut up. And also, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's my motto. Anyway, so yeah, that was Living Color. This has been Cranked and Ranked. Thank you very much for listening to us. We'll be back soon with another episode. As always, I'm Steven, a.k.a. Old Head, saying thank you for listening. Have a good life, everyone. And as usual, to take us out, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx.
Later, dude.